All right, y'all, we're gonna go ahead and get started. More people jump on, they jump on. I'm gonna figure out a way that it can upload. But man, I'm super excited to get started to for this YouTube channel. Just to simply add value to people. That is my goal. That is my prayers. That it simply adds value to you, some way, somehow. Man, all I ask is that if you find something, anything that's spoken tonight that resonates with you, please like and share it, just so you can, so we can impact and reach other people. Because, like I said, that's my goal, is to just help people unleash their light and their potential so they can reach their fullest capacity. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump into it. Like I said, I'm gonna figure out a way to get it recorded or get it uploaded. Hopefully, the live uploaded, just in case people aren't able to hop on right now. They're able to hop on later. But I want to talk about circumstances. But before that, I just want to explain the importance of tapping in, being locked in, being plugged into what's being talking about, being plugged in, and paying attention. Um, just paying attention to what's being said, because where attention is, retention follows. And so if we're not being attentive, if we're not being intentional with our focus, we won't be able to retain the information, and then we won't be able to apply it. And I strongly believe that some things are going to get said tonight that you can go and apply in your life, that'll help you where you're at in your life, today, in the future, and maybe even help some things in your past make sense. All right. I am going to be reading my notes, just simply because I want to make sure I get everything to you, and so I can stay on course and follow. Because a lot of stuff, God be downloading stuff to me as I'm talking, and then stuff will come to me, and then I'll start talking about that. And if for some reason I miss, place where I'm at, just help me get back to where I'm at. So yeah, circumstances. Let's talk about it. So a lot of times, the reason why I chose this as a topic to start off with is because a lot of times our circumstances are getting in the way of us reaching our full potential, right? It's getting in the way of us, just making decisions that are centered around our purpose, our calling, our dream, our vision. And a lot of times the reason being is because we're magnifying our circumstances so much, and we're making that we're and so it's clouding our vision. It's clouding us to from seeing, that by faith God is going to show up regardless. And so what happens is, when we make our circumstances so big, because what you focus on expands. When you make your circumstances so big, it helps you. Well, it doesn't help you, but it helps you not see clear, right? And so, and understand this: our faith, or our steps are tied into our trust, in God, right? So our steps are tied into our trust in God. And so as we trust, we step more and we walk on water. So as we trust, we step more, right? And so if we're not, and a lot of times what ends up happening is because our circumstance, we made our circumstance so big, it limits us from stepping, right? And also faith comes by hearing. And a lot of times you got to hear, all the time, you got to hear positive words. You got to hear God's word. Or if you're someone that's not a believer, and that's another disclaimer, just to make, about my YouTube channel. It is faith-based. I'm not a preacher or anything like that, but that's just my foundation. And there's no way for me to talk about my story, my experiences, the knowledge and wisdom that God has blessed me with, without, mentioning his name. Like, so throughout my channel, all throughout it, his name is going to be referenced, talked about, because he's getting the glory for everything. So just wanted to make that disclaimer. But yeah, going back to what I was talking about. So our steps are tied into our trust in God, right? And our trust, or our faith in God, is tied into us hearing the word, or hearing his word, positive words, affirmation, something positive. It's tied into that. So if we're not stepping, it's because a lot of times it's because we're not hearing positive word. And so you got to ask yourself, what environments, because our environments play a part into that. What are you listening to, on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, yearly basis? Or what environments are you in? Are they uplifting you? Are they speaking life into you? Are they empowering you? Are they holding you accountable? Are they lifting you up? Because all of that matters. And so, if again, faith comes by hearing, and if our steps are tied into our trust in God, and we know trust and faith comes by hearing. So if we're not hearing anything, we're not stepping. And a lot of times, in a lot of those times, it's because of the circumstances that we're faced with. So purpose or vision or your dream may be telling you to go make this investment or go over here or go take this class or whatever the case may be. And we don't take it or we don't go because we're allowing our circumstances to dictate our steps for us. Right. And so instead of faith dictating our steps, our circumstance dictates our steps. But the reason why we're not stepping by faith, or the reason why it's hard for us to allow faith to dictate our steps, is because we're not hearing enough word to activate belief in us. Right. So your belief, it's all tied in. See, when you believe and you have faith and you trust, we tend to step a lot. Literally, you can go into an environment, right? Or it may be in class, or it may be an event, or it may be church, or it may be whatever. You can go into a growth environment and you can hear something and you will leave there and you will end up stepping, right? You will leave there and you will end up making some type of action, some type of move towards your dream, your vision, etc. That lets us know how positive or how impactful and powerful words are. The words that we listen to, the words that we're getting fed with. So if I'm getting fed with negative words, I'm not stepping most likely because I'm not believing. So no belief is activated in me. So what we have to do, we have to let faith make our decisions instead of our circumstances. But in order to be able to maneuver, because life is going to happen, right? There's no way to avoid the circumstances that we're faced with in this life. Some of them, though, we put ourselves there, whether that, like, for example, let's say with finances, we may mismanage money. And so we put ourselves there, right? But there's some situations, and even with that, you can change that around. But then there's some situations where it's out of our control. So circumstances is going to happen. So that's why it's so important that we stay fed on good word. So that way we can consistently and constantly step. Right? Because it's so important that we do that, because our purpose, our dream, and that vision that God has given us is going to require us to make certain steps. But if I'm looking at a situation, if I magnify my circumstance, it causes me not to see clear. And this is another thing. God is always going to provide, right? One of his promises is that he's going to provide for all of our needs. That's one. Another one, he would never leave us nor forsake us. Okay. So knowing that, he's always going to provide all of our needs. He's never going to leave us nor forsake us. No, regardless if I step or I don't step, he got me. He got us, right? So knowing that, wouldn't it be better wouldn't you want to be steps ahead rather than in the same spot, knowing regardless whether you stay in the same spot or you're steps ahead, he's going to provide? But again, the reason why we're not making that step is because there's a lack of trust and faith. But there's a lack in trust and faith because we're not listening to anything positive. So your belief and your trust and your faith can grow just by listening to something positive, listening to positive things, positive words, and renewing your mind on positive things. Right? Because we've been programmed into this world with a lot of negative things, and sometimes we don't even know it. Our subconscious is constantly playing stuff over and over, and there's some negative programming in our subconscious. So we have to it's so important that we renew our mind, because that programs us with the right words. So then when circumstances do come, you have a good programming in your mind, or you have good activity that you've been applying and practicing. So you know what to do in those times. So even in the midst when chaos or whatever challenges are occurring from your circumstance, you can still make steps towards your purpose and your dream and your mission and so forth and so on. All right. So again, we must not allow our circumstances to dictate our steps. We have to let our faith lead us and allow God to guide us towards our purpose, towards our dream and stuff like that. So we can make those steps in the midst of the circumstances that we're encountering at the time. So focusing on circumstances, there's some bullet points I wrote down, and you can write these things down too. Focusing on circumstances, what that does, one, blinds us. And I'm just writing down a few things. It blinds us. It causes fear, right? It causes timidness. Like, we're scared to make that move. We're scared to step. Oh, what are the people going to think? Oh, what are they going to think of me? Oh my gosh, I have, all this stuff going on. How I'm going to step out in purpose, and I barely can afford this. Like, circumstances start creating these thoughts and these negative sayings in our mind and stuff like that. Another thing, it causes us to not walk by faith. And it also puts mission, dream, vision, and purpose on hold. It delays it. And like the example or what I was talking about earlier, the reason why it delays is because, again, purpose can be telling you to go here. Vision can be telling you to go here, but you're scared or you're timid to do that. And because, again, you're allowing your circumstance to occupy your mind so much versus focusing on God. And I'm going to give some bullet points of what focusing on God does, instead of focusing on your circumstances. So again, we must learn how to trust and walk on water, even when circumstances seem crazy. And we have to understand that God is with us and he's going to quiet our mind in the midst of the storm. So it was some disciples. I know, forgot which story, but basically the disciples was in the middle of a storm, right? And Jesus was down below asleep. And they was like, Jesus, I mean, I know you hear this, feel this. You're not worried. You're not scared. Like, we about to flip. It's a storm, all of that. And Jesus woke up and was like, I'm with you. And he basically, he said, peace, be still. And the storm stopped. And we can use that and with our everyday life. Take that same parable and use it in our life, where no matter what storm is going on around you, and equate that to these circumstances and challenges and stuff like that. That God, because Jesus is with you, he's going to quiet your mind. He's going to quiet the storm. So you can still be in the midst and walking in your circumstance on faith while still believing, still trusting in all of that, while chaos may be happening and going on, because God's with you and he's going to guide you. And long as he's with you, it doesn't matter the storm. He's going to make sure you're good. He's going to provide for all your needs. He's never going to leave you nor forsake you. And you can trust that. That's his promise. All right. And so, like I said, I want to go over some bullet points of focusing on God, what that provides and what that does. Focusing on God, write this down. It trust and grows. Your trust grows deeper and your relationship grows deeper. Your trust and relationship grows deeper when you're focusing on God in the midst of your circumstance. Another thing that happens, you're able to walk into the unknown. A lot of us aren't walking into the unknown territory because we're of fear, but we're fearful because we magnified our circumstance so much. All right. Another thing that grows when you're focusing on God is your communication strengthens. Your communication with God strengthens. All right. Another thing is you get to see his glory. You get to, your awe for him grows. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced where it's just like, oh my God, like you can't even put it into words, but you, like, God just showed up for you, but you can't even put it into words, right? And you're just in awe, right? Another thing that happens when you're focusing on God in the midst of your circumstance is it minimizes the problem and it lightens the load. So again, we're not able to step into the unknown because we magnify the problem, right? And so we're not able to see clear. We think, man, there's no way past this. But when you're focusing on God, it minimizes the problem. It magnifies him. In other words, your focus on him magnifies, and that allows you to move forward. That allows you to step that in the midst of whatever is going on. Okay. And then it lightens the load. See, a lot of us, we're carrying loads that we don't even need to carry. Right. It's not even our responsibility to carry this load, whatever that load may be, but we're carrying it because we feel like we have to figure out. First of all, most of the times we feel that we have to figure out why we're going through this circumstance, or figure out what I need to do, right? Instead of just focusing on God and trusting him. And so, again, it lightens that load, or lightens that weight. It also helps us see and hear clear. All right, when we're focusing on God, personal growth happens as well. And it also allows us to walk through knowing everything is going to be okay because God got us. All right. So that's just a few things with focusing on God, instead of focusing on your circumstances. Remember, what you focus on expands. So if I focus on my circumstance, that's going to continue to expand. And I'm never going to be able to walk. And also remember that, and I want to share a story before we get off here, because I don't want to tell you, don't allow your circumstances to dictate your steps, without sharing my own personal story of what I had to go through, where I had to get past and look past my circumstance as well, and kind of walk on that water, a lot of walk on that water. And so, but understand, before I get into that, just understand that, our steps are tied into our trust/faith, right? And faith comes by hearing. So again, If I'm walking on water, if I'm walking by faith, most of the time, a lot of word has been downloaded in you, positive word, whatever form, but it's God's word. And it's also positive word. So long as that, like that's getting downloaded in you, it helps with your walk. It's not saying that it still won't be, because I feel like my belief is walking by faith. It doesn't mean that there's no doubt. You're just choosing to walk by faith in the midst of the doubt. And a lot of times, you may grab a word or you hear a word and it helps you with that walk. All right, like some people are listening to it to this tonight, and there's some word that has been spoken that maybe that's speaking to your situation, and it's going to help you make a step. And that just again shows us the power of word. All right. So, well, like I said, I want to give a story. Maybe about 5 years ago, our one of our cars had got repoed. Well, we was only paying on one car, and it got repoed at the time. And we was a few months behind. At that time, just to kind of give you background, I had left my job maybe a year ago or sometime within that year, to dive into studying leadership, putting time into business full time. So we was had one income at the time. And it was tough, So I'm not saying go do this. I'm not saying do this or anything like this. I'm just sharing my experience and what I experienced. And so our car got repo, right? And at that time, it's when I look back on it, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. But we used to park in between cars, so they wouldn't take it or whatever. And then one night I was actually going to Cali the next morning, because for business, I want to help one of the leaders out there. And so, yeah, I was actually stepping out on faith with that. Didn't really have the funds to go, but I had some help with the funds. Thankfully, the Cali flight was cheap and all of that. But anyway, so that night I was like, oh, we'll be good. Flight leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. We getting up at 4 or whatever. We be good. Walked outside, car gone. I looked at my wife and girlfriend at the time. I was like, babe, they got us. They got us. And so went back in the house, and actually one of my friends, and she's also a leader in our community, she was with me as well. And we both was going to Cali to help one of the leaders in our community. And so we go back inside, and I'm like, man, I looked at my wife. I was like, man, we're gonna be okay. I had a decision to make. I could have allowed my circumstance in that situation to get in my way, or but I wanted to keep my word. And I wanted to also, this to me was an opportunity for me to for my trust to grow deeper. Even when it looked crazy, even when most people look at the situation like you had no business going, and all of that. So I decided to still go. That morning, I only had $20-some to my name. Didn't even know because we had an Uber. We ended up having an Uber. Had $20-some in my name. That took that 20. My mom was sending me money later on that day because we, again, down to one income. So a lot of our bills, a lot of our stuff was going to expenses, or a lot of our income was going to bills and expenses and stuff like that. And so in that paycheck to paycheck, like seriously. And so my mom was sending me money later that day. I didn't want to wake her up early that morning. First of all, to worry her, put that burden on her, or it was just too early, right? So in the midst of that ride and on the plane, obviously that's a lot of time to self. Right. So quiet time, you're thinking about everything like, dang, did I make the right move? Should I have came? Like, is this stupid? All these type of thoughts start coming to my head. And I was like, but I knew in that moment, I had been, like I said, I had left my job. I started getting deep into study and practicing. My spiritual growth grew that year. My leadership growth grew that year. My mentality grew that year. A lot of things grew that year because I actually, a couple of weeks ago, I put in 900 to 1,000 hours. So I took a 5-year part-time period and I condensed it to 9 months, from the studying that I was putting in and the things I was doing with business. Right. And so, so I don't regret anything. But I knew in that moment, I knew what to do. So I started reading some of my notebook. One of my notebooks that I had was a spiritual notebook that I had. I like to call it spiritual warfare book, like for real, that it got me through a tough time prior to that situation. And so I went back and I started reading those notes. I also had a book that I was reading. I was reading that. So I was allowing words, positive words, things that God had already spoken over me to feed me, to help me continue to step. Because if not, oh, it was going to be tough. That trip was going to be tough. And so I was listening to worship music as well, because I needed my spirits to be lifted. Because I knew if not, if I set up in that, I was gonna go down this downward spiral, especially with my thought process, right? And so listening to this song called Oceans over and over and over again. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. It's by Hillsong. So I started listening to that over and over and over again, and it was talking about faith, and basically it was talking about God stretching your faith and allowing you to walk on water without borders, right? And so it was just so fitting for that situation. And a mix of all that, and I was in communication with God as well, constant communication, because there was no way that I would have got through that. And long story short, y'all, that was one of the best trips that I've had in my life. I needed that trip more than I even knew at the time. All of my needs were met. I even came back with $10 to $20 to my name. Like seriously. And I was on a strict budget. Meals were getting taken care of when I was down there, and wasn't even asking. Besides my friend that went with me, no one else knew what was going on. And what's crazy, so like we was already expecting our income tax, right, to kind of catch up on our bill, on the car note. And so was so crazy, maybe a week or two later after I got back from that trip, the income tax came the last day that I was able to get the car back. Literally last day. So while I was there in Cali, when it looked scary, it looked crazy, it looked like I had no business being there, but I knew it was an investment into my future. God still provided. God provided every step of the way. When we got back, we had to, for that week and a half to 2 weeks, we had to Uber. We even rented cars just to do what we had to do. And God provided throughout that whole time as well. And then we end up getting the money to get the car back and catch the payments up. And then that car we still got that car. It's paid off. Yeah. So I say all that to say, one, with the faith comes by hearing. See, when I was faced with that situation, I had to listen to things. See, what I'm sharing with you is from my experience. So I had to listen to things to help me walk. I had to read things and reaffirm or read what God had already spoken over my life and affirmed over my life in order for me to continue to move and walk. And that's why that is so important that you do that. Don't just allow yourself to sit up in that. Actively do things that God has already taught you and brought in your life. Those positive things to get your mindset, because our mind has to continue to renew and shift. Because if not, if we sit up in our funk, or we sit up in that circumstance or whatever that situation is, we will spiral. And that's where the enemy wants us, because if we're spiraling, it's hard for us to step. It's hard for us to see. It's hard for us to move. Right. And we're getting discouraged, and we're getting down on ourselves, and we're beating ourselves up. So, but when we switch our focus and we focus on God, and we continue to keep communication with Him, and we do the things that He's taught us to do in those times, what ends up happening is now you're able to step, now you're able to walk, now you're able to move, even when it may look crazy, because God is going to supply all of our needs. And so in that time with that repo, He made sure everything was good. And y'all, it was looking crazy. Like y'all know how income tax is. You don't know when that thing coming. So the fact that it came that last day for us to get the car back was just crazy. And that's why I said your eye grows. It's like, wow, like how, like what are the odds? You know what I'm saying? So y'all, I want you to know you got to make a decision. That circumstances is not going to hold you back. You got to make that decision. I think that's where it starts, is with a decision that no matter what, see, because your dream, that dream you have, that vision you have, that purpose you have, it comes with that the journey is going to come with a lot of circumstances. And if you constantly allow your circumstances to stop you, you're going to be constantly on this stop and go thing, right? One of our mentors this past weekend, we was in Houston. He did this picture of like vision a cafeteria line, right? And he did a start to finish. And he was like, and picture that cafeteria line from start to finish is like the vision or dream or purpose that God has given you. Well, he did. So he started and then he just veered off and said, that's where people get distracted. And that distraction may be circumstances. That distraction may be friends. It may be thinking that you have, all different types of things. And so he kept doing this box. So he's like, we start and then we just continue to go in this box instead of finishing and going to the end of that cafeteria line, because we'll start and we'll get distracted. And so some of us have been doing this, going in that box, in that circle for years. And it's because every time we get on the start, as soon as we're going, a circumstance or a situation happens. Now it's like, we're done. We finished. We're mentally checked out and finished. And we're allowing our circumstance to constantly dictate our steps. But I'm telling you that you're going to have to decide that no matter what, that faith is going to dictate your steps instead of your circumstance. And so I can share this story with you today because I did not allow circumstance to dictate my steps. And in the midst of it, in the midst of my circumstance, I allowed God to do his thing. It's not easy. So I'm not sitting here saying that it's easy. It's not. But I know that you can do it. You just have to stand on that word. That's why it's so important that you make sure that you get fed with positive word, because that's going to help you step. All right, so y'all, that's it for tonight. I'll be going live again next week. Got a lot in store for this channel. I am super excited, y'all. All I ask again, like I said, that you do, if anything that I said tonight resonated with you, spoke to you in some type of way, please like and share this just to spread the impact, because you don't know who else that this can impact. And all I want to do is impact one person a day. So you helping me spread this is just going to help me do just that. And also in the midst of that, it's going to help spread your impact as well. So you guys have a phenomenal night. God bless. And thank you for tuning in.